All right, everyone. Link in the description, archived, of course. Venezuela's government is absolutely facilitating an invasion of the USA by Tren De Aragua. This article basically points that out and then disclaims it. It's a TDS article. Well, they're not really directly facilitating an invasion. They're sort of looking the other way. The Maduro regime tends to ignore these groups unless they raise hell in the country, and so they've decided to infiltrate. But then it also points out, and lie by structure, as usual with legacy media articles, you have to go down quite some distance to get to it. And it says, oh, well, there are some officials that appear to have been facilitating these sorts of things. Okay, so members of the Maduro administration are facilitating the movement of violent cartel members into the United States. It doesn't matter if Maduro himself commanded it to happen, went to the cartel meeting. He sits down, he lights up his cigar and says, boys, you could be real helpful in destroying the United States. It would be great and have higher crime and more destabilization, and you can drain benefits potentially while there because apparently, even if you have PDA tattoos on, liberals will defend you now. We've seen this with that El Salvador case with Eduardo there. Apparently, it doesn't matter if you're a member of a criminal network, a known member. That's okay. It's all right. You can come in, and, you rape the kid and you sell the drugs and you call it a day and then buy an illegal handgun. This is actually happening. This is not a joke. There is a literal invasion of the United States by cartels at the moment. Why? Because until recently, there was no attempt to prevent it. And so they said, look, I can stay here in Venezuela and deal crack cocaine down here, or I can go to Bogota or someplace like that, or Colombia. I make a good living. I'm a cartel member, so nobody fucks with me basically, and the governments basically turn a blind eye because and this is how they proliferate. The governments here, they turn a blind eye to it because they're like, as long as you're not destabilizing the regime, they do not care. Oh, you're making twice the national salary selling coke? Good for you. That's fine, just as long as you vote for me, kid. When the United States gave up its border under Joe Biden and basically said, look, come all ye faithful, we don't care. We've given up, you can just come into the country illegally, and we're not really going to do anything. And especially with liberals that quite clearly are in effect shielding cartel members. We had that, or at least illegals in general. You had that judge that is now in jail for attempting to shuttle an illegal immigrant out of the courtroom to escape the DEA and ICE, wanted for other crimes, I believe, if I remember correctly. When this sort of thing is happening, is it not equivalent to the way in which those regimes, which this article does correctly point out, by the way, which is hilarious, isn't it roughly equivalent to how those regimes, Colombia and Venezuela, some of the other narco countries, basically, which, I mean, it would be spectacular if it weren't for all the terrorists running around. Isn't it similar to how they function? You've got a lax judicial system and a government, under Biden at least, that turned a blind eye to the issue. You've got no attempt. I mean, down there, it doesn't matter if you build border walls, although there has been crossfire exchange between certain Latin American nations. Happens in Africa from time to time as well. Ethnic violence, especially because the British and French carved it up wrong. You have these problems. And it doesn't make any sense to maintain this particular status quo because it quite clearly does not work. Venezuelan officials, short of Maduro, and by the way, U.S. intel might not even be able to tell you the answer about whether Maduro is aware of these activities going on. It's entirely possible that he is, by the way, and they simply do not know. In fact, the article points that out as well. Oh, how helpful. Wonderful. U.S. intel can't tell me for sure for certain whether Nicolas Maduro is centrally responsible for sending literal terrorists into the United States, because Tren De Aragua has acted in a terroristic manner. Under the Biden administration, they took over a number of apartment complexes. Local police wouldn't even respond. It took an exceptional amount of time for them to actually respond in any meaningful fashion because they were all heavily armed and had fortified the location and forced all the other residents out. They effectively made a series of drug and trafficking compounds. This was effectively allowed for an extended period of time, and the locals that were there, having their doors beaten on at 3 a.m., getting held at gunpoint, having their kids trafficked, seeing people passed out on drugs in the hallways, trash piling up and shit like that. What did they do? They called the popo. Said, look, there's like five dudes with apparently automatic weapons roaming the hallways and they're beating on my door. Can you help me? No, we're sorry. We're not able to do anything right now. We don't have the resources. Then they would call the stadies. Then they would call, or the National Guard or something like that. Sorry, there's nothing we can do. It's not in our jurisdiction and shit like that. Months went by in some of these cases, and nothing was done. At least under Donald Trump, that sort of stunt is probably not going to succeed because you'll probably have, yeah, National Guard troops. The U.S. Army will move in. If you really want to fuck with them, send in a couple of squads of Marines. They'll start cannibalizing the bodies. Oh man, this is so much better than the MREs. It's kind of a joke, but only kinda. Venezuela's government is facilitating this. The article effectively disproves itself, by the way. This is pure legacy media bullshit. The article at first states, well, there's no concerted effort for this to actually happen. Oh, well, there is a concerted effort, but it just doesn't involve Maduro himself. But we're not really sure that it doesn't involve Maduro himself because Intel is a little sketchy on that particular point. Well, then why even make the goddamn article? Why don't you just tell it how it is? Tren De Aragua is in the United States. It is largely the result of Biden's lax border policy. Much of this damage occurred under his administration, although it's still occurring under the Trump administration. The border wall is not complete, and you can blame Congress for that, for not appropriating more funds and more resources more quickly. That's not Trump's fault. He can't unilaterally do really that much other than drain defense spending. Discretionary defense spending is basically going to be his pot of gold for the border wall, thanks to the federal court judge's ruling, and I believe, ironically, the Ninth Circuit actually during his first term. So that's binding, unless the Democrats are crazy enough to go before the Supreme Court and say Donald Trump shouldn't be able to secure the border. That's illegal. It's unconstitutional for her to secure the border. No, the border has nothing to do with national defense. That was pretty much their argument. There's a reason why they lost that court case. This is an insane situation. It shouldn't be happening. And perhaps we need to do something about the Venezuelan administration. Just saying. I don't believe in war. But if you were to send in, the ninjas, so to speak, and cut Maduro's head off, I don't think that even most Venezuelans would really care about that at this point, considering the state of their economy. Just saying. That's about all. Peace out.